For this one, I did have to draw a map because everyone on the street sees something at certain times. So, and there's a drone flying over at certain times. So I had to know exactly where everyone lived to be able to see what they saw at a given.
This one I was so fixated on who could see what and who could potentially hear what and what window was open and all of that,
I did not do that.
No.
No, my town is very kind of rural and sprawling.
Right.
So no, I did not make a map, but that sounds like a lot of fun.
The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Welcome, ladies, and welcome everyone to the Ashley and Shari show. Shari, your book is called Everyone Here is Lying, which I was thinking conceivably could be the name of all three of your novels. All three of you are gifted in the sort of spinning of the domestic suspense novel, if you will. All three of them are packed full of red herrings and little white lies, maybe bigger than little white lies, people remembering and disremembering. So I thought we'd just start by each of you describing what your book is. It encapsulates sort of the idea of the book. And in the context of that, also, perhaps if you could tell us if there was an image or a word or a sentence that kind of like lit the match for the idea. I know, Shari, we've talked before, and you often are inspired by something you read in a paper or something. Was that the case?
Yeah.
In this case? Yeah.
So my book, Everyone Here is Lying, is about a little 9-year-old girl goes missing on her way home from school, and the whole neighborhood becomes obsessed with finding this little girl. And what's interesting about her is that she's not the easiest kid. And just before she disappeared, her father had come home in the middle of the day and struck her really hard and left, and then she disappeared. So he soon becomes a suspect, and everyone's lying, and everyone's got things to hide. And I always think that, if you've got secrets and you live on a street, you better hope that there's no murder or disappearance on your street, because all your horrible secrets will come out. It's awful. In terms of what inspired me, it's a couple things. I wanted to have a child disappear, but I didn't want it to be a child who was a perfect child. It's a bit like you.
Yeah.
Your children are, yeah. So I wanted
not my
to
real
be,
children.
I didn't want it to be, not the real children. I didn't want it to be, a lovely little child. And everyone, said only good things about her. I wanted it to be a child where the parents might perhaps want to be rid of her, or that's harsh, but I'm sitting beside Ashley Audrain here, so it's not that harsh, really. Yeah. If you want to go dark, So I had, I had read an article a few years ago about very difficult children around 9 years of age, and that kind of inspired me a little bit. Yeah.
Cool.
Great. And so The Whispers is a story about 4 neighboring women who live on Harlow Street. And they don't quite realize the ways in which their lives are connected until there's a tragedy that happens on the street one night. And that tragedy sort of acts as this thread that's pulled, that sort of unravels all of the women's lives after that. And they start to realize the ways in which their lives are in fact quite connected. And there was a few things similar. There was a few things that sort of came together at the time that inspired the book. And sometimes I feel like the ideas come from, something like a tangible thing happening or an image I can't get out of my mind. And then other times it's sort of themes. But for this one, I feel like we were living in a house, this old kind of Victorian semi, and my son, so we moved into the house. When we moved into the house, my son was just born. And his nursery was at the front of the house and overlooked the street. And when we moved in, there was a window, like a really tall, long window that was quite low to the ground. And there was no screen and there was no lock. And the window could just sort of open to the street. And I mean, at the time, he was an infant and he was in a crib, and I didn't worry about it, so much. But I would think every single day when I walked into his nursery, like, what would happen if a child fell out of a window? And my mom would always say, you have to get a lock. Every time she came over, she would say, you have to put a lock on that window, even though, my son couldn't crawl or anything at that point. So it was just this haunting visual that I sort of carried with me, that I knew would work its way into a book. And I'm not spoiling anything by saying, that there's something very similar to that happens right at the beginning of the book. And then the other thing is, when I wrote The Push, it was so closely tied to one woman's perspective. We were so interior. It was such an interior. We were so in the mind of the character for the whole book. And I really loved that, and it was this very sort of close perspective. But for the second book, I wanted to write from multiple perspectives. I wanted to do something totally different. And so this book, we get the perspective, like the third-person perspective, from 4 different women. So that was sort of just a personal challenge to myself to try to write something a bit different. And so those were some of the things that came together for the inspiration.
Thank you.
27 Minutes is about grief and long buried secrets, and finally answering this question that's kind of haunted this very small claustrophobic town for the last 10 years. On the night of this fatal car crash, why did it take the brother of the victim, who had been driving, 27 minutes to call for help, when had he called earlier, she might still be alive? The inspiration for me was kind of twofold. I start with a twist, and the twist for this, and I'm not going to tell you the movie, but about 15 years ago I watched this horror movie, and the twist completely blew me away and kind of sat on my shoulder for a really long time. And then my mother passed away in 2018, and I wrote kind of through that grief. So for me, it was like this confluence of those two things.
Interesting. Ashley, I wanted to chisel down on your book. There is the main centerpiece of your book is this party in this sort of posh house outside, and we loop back again and again to this party, and it propels some of the action. You write, there is, quote, something animalistic about the way middle-aged adults size each other up while feigning friendliness in the backyard of the most expensive house on the street, unquote. I wanted to ask you about some of the central tensions in the book between those who are childless or child-free versus those who are parents. And I guess the secondary question is, how popular are you on your own street these days?
Well, I've actually moved since the book came
Smart
out.
girl.
But
Yeah.
I feel like there was some strange looks when I did move to that street as well. And actually, ironically, we moved to the same street as our best friends, which was also a little bit reflective of the book. But yeah, I think that backyard party scene. It's interesting. I think there's some themes in the book that are very much reflected in sort of what happens in that reoccurring backyard party. But I'm writing about characters who are just entering middle age. They are just entering this midlife. They're sort of at around 40. And I think that's such a fascinating time in life, because I think for so many women, for everybody, but I'm writing about women, so I'll speak to women, it's this sort of time in life where, for the first time, you're sort of forced to really take a look at the life that you have built. A lot of your decisions have been made. Your 20s is sort of this decade where you're making a lot of more selfish decisions about what you want in life, rightfully so. And in the 30s, we tend to be making decisions about, where we will live, and, big decisions about career, who our partner might be, what our family is going to look like. And it's really this decade of sort of building, And then in your 40s, you're sort of just living that life that you have built. And I think it's a real time of self-reflection. I think a lot of people really have to sort of take stock of, am I who I thought I would be in the world now? And is this the life that I thought I was building? And how does it feel? And if it doesn't, if you aren't who you are and the life is not what you wanted, like, what do you do about it at that point? You feel so invested, and so you've given so much time and to build that life. And so there's so much natural tension that comes from that. And I think especially when we start comparing ourselves to other people and looking at the family across the street or the family next door or our friends who've maybe made different decisions. And so that really is the dynamic between these main characters. And that backyard party scene was not there in the first drafts of the book, so I added that in later. And I think it was because I realized that because I was writing these different parts of the book from different perspectives of these women, they were always sort of thinking about each other and sort of talking about each other, but I needed one space where they all were physically together to really feel, like, to give the reader could really feel that tension between them. And so I started writing. I was only going to do a couple of those scenes, and I loved them so much, and they were so much fun to write that then they really, they occur like 6 or 7 times throughout the book. And then they sort of, there's some key events that sort of unfold as a result of that party. And it was so fun to write about, yeah.
It was fun. You do a very good job in, like, sort of just communicating the facade of things in the way people are performing to each other, which is something that all 3 of your books have in common. And speaking of streets, when we were backstage, we discovered that 2 of you lived on the same street in Toronto at different points in your life. Yeah. So what is it about that street?
It's a great street. It's a great street in Toronto.
Yeah. In Riverdale,
In
right?
Riverdale, yeah.
Yeah. Ashley, the characters in your book, 27 Minutes, are stuck. They're kind of in limbo, and they're almost having to keep reliving the worst day of their life over and over again. What distinguishes your book is that it takes place within a taut 3-day period. In what ways was that challenging to write? Did you feel like stuck yourself when you were writing it in that way? Was that always the scenario that you were running with, this 3-day?
I definitely wanted to have it in a very short time frame to add tension. The feeling of being stuck, I think, is especially true with grief, which is very much what this book is about, but also how things can change just so quickly. And as they unravel over these 3 days, there's just a lot of change. And so, yeah, I started out wanting to write in that very short period of time.
Shari, when I think about your books, I think of you as being such a technician when it comes to plotting. I mean, it almost seems like you're like a watchmaker, like everything is so meticulously plotted. What is your approach, and what are your secrets besides having a cat? I've heard you say having a cat is important to your writing. But
My cat died.
Okay, well,
But,
that's a
okay,
downer.
My cat died tragically,
Yeah.
and I grieved for a while, and then a month or 2 ago we got a new cat.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
And is the cat a good writer's
No,
companion?
she's actually not interested in crime fiction at all, and has been nowhere near my computer. But I take a break and pat her now and then. That's good enough.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
She's more into romance, yeah.
She's more into engineering and being with my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's not really a writer, but she's good company.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I forget the question.
Just about your plotting. I know
plotting.
famously you don't
Yes,
plot
I don't
out in
plot.
advance.
Yes, so this will annoy some people and confuse people too. I don't plot at all. I just start with a single idea or a single conflict with a couple of people in a room, and with everyone here is lying. It was just the dad with his very difficult daughter in the kitchen where he hit her. And I have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, I did know the girl would disappear. That's it. And then I just grow from there, and I just develop other characters, and they make decisions that affect the plot, and then the plot will make someone make a very bad decision, because it's always the bad decisions that are fun. And it just becomes very organic and very complicated very easily for me. I don't know why, and how it wraps up in the end, I have no idea. Like, I just finished book number 9 last week, and
Amazing.
I say finish, but it's just a first draft, so I still have a lot of work to do. It's sort of like the end of the beginning, and that's it. But I'm always amazed when I finish a draft.
So
Because I never know where it's
You
going
don't
to go.
have like a big map like Carrie Matheson
no.
in Homeland?
No,
Like-
no. I have tried that, and I can't think of anything
Yeah.
at all. I have to be in the characters' heads, facing their conflicts, and then they do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since all of your books take place in closed communities or a closed neighborhood, did you actually have a map in your head of like who could see what, or how did you guys approach that? Like, did you know what the distance would be from one house to another, et cetera?
For this one, I did have to draw a map,
Yeah.
because everyone on the street sees something at certain times. So, and there's a drone flying over at certain times. So I had to know exactly where everyone lived to be able to see what they saw at a given time.
Yeah,
But normally I don't have to do maps.
I did that too with this one. There was really only 4 houses, but
Yeah.
it was because the way the plot unfolds, without giving anything away, there was a lot of overhearing things and sort of witnessing things, and so there needed to be the space between the houses was very important, and who lived where and who was where when was very important. And so when at one point I was sort of just sketching it out to look at it and just make sure some of those logistics worked. I didn't have to do that with the push, but this one I was so fixated on who could see what and who could potentially hear what and what window was open and all of that. Yeah.
I did not do that.
No.
No. My town is very kind of rural and sprawling.
Right.
So no, I did not make a map, but that sounds like a lot of fun.
But you had an image
Yeah.
of the town,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
just flickering in your head? kind of
Yes,
thing?
it's very based on the very small town that my mom grew up in PEI. And so the homes kind of, I had that in mind, but it is a kind of sprawling rural community.
I wanted to veer a little bit and just ask you guys about the idea of unlikable characters, which is something that no doubt anyone who's writing the kind of books that you guys write gets lobbed. And I think maybe like female suspense novelists get that maybe more often than not. When I hear someone talk about likable and unlikable characters, I just think that's a bizarre concept, because people are just flawed, and we're looking at like 360 of people, and I always think of also there's a quote, an Oscar Wilde quote, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So whose perspective is it? But yeah, what are your thoughts about this whole idea of unlikable, likable? Yeah.
I love this topic.
Yeah.
Because I really feel like, well, first of all, I think that, we never really talk about, as you say, we never really talk about male characters as being likable or unlikable. It tends to always be the female characters that are sort of given that label, or that people want to talk about that with. And, I really feel like, in both of my books and this third book that I'm working on now, I'm really only interested in unlikable characters.
Yes.
Like, that's really all I want to write.
Same.
And I really feel like, with that idea of, and sometimes you get feedback, from readers or editors that sort of like they need to be more likable, or we need to feel. And I think there's something to be said for feeling empathy for a character, but I think you can feel empathy for a character that is not this, idea of a likable character. And I really think it comes down to sort of to what you're saying is this. I always think like, when you're writing a character, you're really just giving everyone their internal thoughts, like the real thoughts they have when they meet somebody or about their own conflict. And if we had speech bubble, if we walked around with speech bubbles, like, thought bubbles on our head all day, and we got to see what we all thought every time we met someone or did something, like, we'd all be unlikable characters, right? Like, that's just life. That's just who humans are.
Yeah.
And
you could ask someone in your own family, and you will be the unlikable person in their story.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I really take it as such a compliment if if one of my characters is polarizing or feels unlikable. Like, I think that's just they're real. Yeah. And I feel like we've had this conversation. I feel like you've felt like this
we're
too.
similar.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing about unlikable characters is, garbage. But it's an interesting point about people don't like to see unlikable women or unlikable children. But I think
You've done both.
so she. But I think, to me, they have to be interesting. I don't care if they're likable or not. And like you, I like to go really dark and deep, and everybody has something unlikable about them.
Yeah.
And, if you weren't writing about the interesting stuff, I mean, if everything was hunky-dory beautiful, it wouldn't be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason they're making yet another series about Ripley, Patricia Highsmith. Where people are interested in seeing them get away with stuff or figure them out, right? Yeah.
I don't think people have a problem reading unlikable women characters anymore.
I get a lot of people that find my characters extremely unlikable. So, which has kind of surprised me a little bit. But what I get is that they aren't rooting for anybody, which makes me very sad for my characters. But I agree. I have no interest in someone who's entirely likable because that's so
What's the
fake.
conflict? What's the tension?
What's the conflict? And these are thrillers. These are dark stories.
Yeah.
That kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
In The Whispers, as I told you, I really like the character of Whitney, who I think is probably the most unlikable. Like, she has no interest in being the good mother, and she's nakedly ambitious. So was that really fun to write?
Yeah, she really was fun to write, and I feel like I sort of knew. I mean, I sort of knew that she would be this sort of polarizing, the most polarizing of the four women, and she was the most interesting to write, and also I think in a way the most challenging to write because she, as you said, she's incredibly ambitious. She's really focused on her career over the duties of sort of motherhood that she sees her other friends kind of take on. I always say she's sort of the kind of woman who would rather stay late at the office on a Friday night to work than to go home and sort of deal with the bedtime and the bath time routine. And she's also a very sexual person, which I think people can be very uncomfortable with a mother expressing that kind of sexuality. She makes some very questionable decisions for sure. And she's the kind of person who sort of rubs people the wrong way, But I think I've also heard from a lot of readers who really relate to so much of her or relate to pieces of her. And that was sort of my intention with her, was to sort of, push the boundaries a little on sort of what we see for a female character like that on the page, but also I wanted readers to have empathy for her and find some level of connection with her. Because, I really love her. I think she's interesting. Yeah.
Shari, you once told me a psychopath is a high-functioning sociopath. Do I have that right?
I didn't know what I was talking about. I think they're both kind of the same, but
Right.
That's how I think of it.
Yeah. So everyone here is lying. A question for, I guess, all three of you is, are you good at being able to tell when someone is lying or fibbing or,
I think I suck at it. I really do. I met someone who said they could always tell when someone was lying, and
like they look to the left or...
Well, there's that. There's the simple ones, right? But a really clever psychopath, they're not normal, so they don't know the little... Like, they can lie, and you can't tell.
Right.
I find...
Because they believe their lies.
No, they're manipulating you when they do it. But I love psychopaths, and I have one in every book. So I have to tell you, the one I just wrote, I have a psychopath in a fat suit.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know why I love that so much. Clearly it's going to have to go because it didn't get a response. But I really like psychopaths. They're fascinating to me because you can't read them. That's the thing. And so they can do all kinds of horrible things. And
As a writer, yeah, that's gold. Yeah.
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 Yeah, for sure.
What about you guys in terms of the whole lying?
I can tell when my kids are lying.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just going to say I can't tell.
So I can. They probably don't know that I can, but I can.
That's funny.
They're sitting there, that's why.
They're
I'm
yes.
looking
yeah.
over there.
And I was going to say the opposite, that my kids are here too, and my daughter wanted me to mention her, so I feel like I'll take this. Her name is Waverly, and now I've mentioned her in the event. So but my son lied to me the other day, and it was so good that I completely bought it. He's 8 years old, and I was like, I had a reaction to it, and I went and told my husband, and then he came up to me after and said, I was just kidding. And it was like an Oscar-winning performance. It was like so good. So I don't know if that just means that I thought that's my problem or his problem, but I guess we'll find out eventually.
Or maybe he's going to be a novelist.
Or maybe he'll be a novelist. Yeah.
Given the number of like truth is stranger than fiction stories that were constantly being funneled through, real life. I mean, I'm thinking like the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story or the Idaho student murders and stuff. Do you ever, like, as a writer of these kinds of novels, think, I'm running out of ideas, or I can't compete with real life?
Yeah. And I often think I can't top that,
Yeah.
or I can't write. It's difficult because if you write something like real life, if you write something that bizarre, people think it's not believable. But
Yeah.
real life is completely unbelievable and it's real. So it's a bit tricky.
Yeah.
It's hard to really go out there when real life is already more out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like oftentimes I'll have ideas or think of things or want to write something into a book, and I can hear my editor saying to me, "No, it's not believable enough." Because like I think in this world, like you're trying to do. It has to be, you're pushing the boundary of what real life is, obviously, because you're trying to entertain. At the end of the day, you're trying to entertain. You're trying to craft a story with a brilliant twist or whatever, like yours is so. But you can't. But you have to bring the reader on. You can't have the reader be like, oh, that's just, it's like coincidence, right? It's like you don't want to have too many coincidences in your book because you feel like the reader's not going to be there with you. But then you hear these, so you sort of measure yourself, like you sort of are a bit measured in terms of what you think you can put on the page. And then you hear stories in the news and you think, well, I'd never get away with that. Like I could never get away with that in a book.
Yeah. Or you think, I had that idea and now someone's done it in
now,
real life and now I can't write it.
Exactly, yeah.
So frustrating.
Something that people might not know is that these two Ashleys are writing partners, and this is your first event actually appearing together on stage. Tell us a little bit, Ashley, like how did this relationship sort of unfold, and what has it meant to you having this
Having
writing
Ashley
part?
Audrain as my writing partner has been pretty great.
Yeah. How did it begin?
It began, we worked kind of in a similar capacity. Ashley was in PR and I was an editorial writer. And so we met through events and I think we got together because of writing.
Yeah.
Right? It was a long time ago.
We had a mutual friend. This was like
and Sean
maybe-
McDonald.
Yeah.
I think Sarah's here.
Oh.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen her.
So yeah, we had a
But,
mutual friend who put us in touch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
because I was doing
No.
like writing night courses, but hadn't really
Right.
started to pursue writing, and
And
you
I was
had started
trying,
a
I
first
think,
novel. Yeah.
And then we will just kind of send drafts, and kind of the support has been amazing because it is a really lonely thing. And I'm the luckiest because Ashley's brilliant, but also because she's gone through it already, so I can just ask her things, and it's really been like an invaluable friendship.
Yeah.
for sure.
I really believe that like my writing would not be like the push would not have been the push, and the whispers would not have been the whispers at all if it wasn't for Ashley. Like it's a lot. We give each other a lot of feedback and a lot of bouncing around ideas, brainstorming. Like we share drafts, we switch drafts and sort of make notes for each other, and also help with, like, sometimes you'll get feedback from an editor and think like you've got to solve a problem and you don't really know how, and it's so wonderful to have somebody as talented as Ashley to chat through it with, and she's given me so many great ideas and so much support over the years. And so now it's been, and I couldn't be happier for her. Her book debuted at #1 on the Canadian bestseller list, which is crazy. I'm just so proud of her and so happy for her. And she really is one of like probably the hardest working writer that I know. She really is. She works so hard, and it's really inspiring to see that. And it's been so wonderful to have each other. Yeah, because it is such a solitary thing. Like it is really just head down by yourself at your computer all day, And so to have that is just so wonderful. Yeah. So I posted this on Instagram today, but so it's been maybe almost 10 years, like 8 to 10 years that we used to, in the middle of trading drafts and that sort of stuff, obviously we were both reading within this genre all the time, and we would read Shari's books all the time and talk about like just how amazing she was, and the books, like just as you said, she's just so brilliant at the craft of this. And when The Couple Next Door came out, your first book came out, it was like we were just new sort of writing partners at that time. And I just feel like we followed your career, just admired you so much. And then now here we are on stage with you, and it's really incredible. It's really incredible. Bring her in. So
Is there someone you show your first draft to, or do you just write too many books that you don't have even a chance to?
My story. I wrote Couple Next Door in secret because I didn't want to show it to anyone until my agent took it, and then it was all over the place. And then for a while I would give them to my husband, but he was he's too slow a reader. And then after that I would give them to my agent. So I don't really have a writing partner or a writing group, or I don't really have the time to wait for someone to come back with feedback in a way, my agent usually reads it first, and then my editors get it.
I wanted to ask you guys about the modern art, I guess, of promoting books in this social media age. It seems to me like it's great in terms of reaching people and talking to readers directly, but it also seems like there's a lot of labor and a lot of demands on writers, which maybe ironically can get in the way of the actual writing. So, and specifically, Ashley, because you came from the publicity side, what is your sort of sense of all of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I worked in publicity at Penguin Canada for a couple years just before I wrote The Push. And I mean, so that was like almost like 10 years ago now, and everything has changed so much because really social media was not the dominating thing then in terms of how people were marketing books or getting the word out about books.
Bookstagram.
That didn't exist, so it's just such a different game now. But it's a double-edged sword, right? For the reasons you mentioned, but also I know you had a book come out in the pandemic, I think, right? Yes, two.
Or three, maybe.
Oh, gosh,
however many years the pandemic lasted.
Whenever that was. And The Push came out in the pandemic. It came out in January 2021, which we were still in the thick of the pandemic then. And so when I look back, if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for like connecting with readers and book clubs and media and everything on social media, I mean, that was the only way to really promote, like the only thing I could do, because you couldn't get out and do anything else at that time. So it was so valuable. But it's tough. It's hard. I think you have to really just find the balance with it. And there's places where it makes sense for authors to be, I think, and places where a lot of authors are just uncomfortable, like TikTok, or for me, I don't know, like that kind of thing. But it's tough.
I think people assume that authors are really good at this stuff. And I'm older than a lot of them, and I actually find it really difficult. And I don't find it difficult to do Twitter or Instagram, but I find it really difficult to take something and move it to a different platform without someone giving me an asset.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. It takes me so much time to figure out how to promote something if I don't have something to use. If I have to make something, if I have to drag something from somewhere else, if I have to, nothing ever works the way it's supposed to work. So I have my husband do a lot of fixing for me.
There's almost an expectation for the writer to be this persona.
Yeah, they just assume you know how to do this stuff, but I don't know how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And it changes all the time.
Yeah.
So with each book, it's different. I don't do Facebook anymore because it's changed so much I can't understand how to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have to sort of find where you're comfortable, right? Like you have to sort of,
I
mean,
think
you're
some
great
people
on
are really-
Instagram. You're good.
I don't
You're
think
good
so.
on
I think
Instagram.
some people are really good at it.
Yeah.
Like Carly Fortune, Jessica Knoll. I think it comes really naturally to them, and I think and hope that they enjoy it, but it does not come naturally to me. I try, but that's all I can do. Try.
Shari, just going back a little bit, to your book and getting into the mind of this troubled child, I thought maybe people might want to know what your research into that was and what has been the response. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to give away what I think is wrong with this girl just yet. Like if you haven't read the book, she's very troubled. Well, I like psychopaths. What should I say? I mean, the girl has some issues.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in children who have those kinds of issues. I don't want to give too much away, but what was the question? She
Just what kind of research or reading did you do?
I do a lot of reading
Yeah.
online about, articles in Psychology Today and,
Yeah.
how brain scans reveal what's going on in your psychopathic mind.
Yeah.
And, I just do a lot of reading.
Is there something about a 9-year-old in particular? Because
I like that age because that's the age that I remember becoming sort of sentient and remembering. I don't remember much before I was 9. And that's a sort of a nice age before. It's a nice age. They're still children. 12-year-olds these days are, older. But yeah, I had read some articles about children around that age and the behaviors that you might see in a very troubled child. Yeah.
What are you guys working on now? The dreaded question. Well, we know you have.
I have
4 books coming out next week.
I wish I had 4 books coming out next week. I have one coming out in July called "What Have You Done," and it's set in
To the point.
It's set in rural Vermont, and it's about. It starts off. This farmer's out on his tractor one morning, and he sees a girl's body in his hayfield, with these vultures all swirling around, and this girl's been murdered. And in this small town, everybody's wanting to know who killed this girl.
Yeah.
And the girl, there's a ghost in it. The girl is there as a ghost, as a character in the book. Not really sure why she's there. Like she doesn't realize in the beginning that she's dead, and her voice comes out, and it's a murder mystery with lots of suspects, and she's also
talking directly to the to the reader, or
no, you're in her head. She's a third person point of view character,
Yeah.
trying to understand what's happened to her and trying to remember what led up to her murder. So, yeah.
And Ashley?
Yeah, so I'm working.
You moved. You left your
I've
neighborhood.
left that street. So I'm working.
Terrorize another neighborhood.
I'm working on a 3rd book,
Yeah.
now, and it's still early days, but I cannot write as fast as Shari. I wish I could. One day, that's my goal. But yeah, it's the same sort of territory as my last 2 books, and I hopefully would. For the same kind of reader, some of the same themes, but totally different. So yeah,
and the push,
plugging
your
away.
first book continues to find new readers and new territories, right?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been so great. It's so amazing to me. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, I'm working on something. My editor's right there. It's same kind of vibes, I think, although this one deals with a newlyweds going on a honeymoon in a very remote area with a snowstorm barreling down. I'm actually really looking forward to getting back to it. I've kind of put it on hold a little bit to deal with 27 minutes, but I'm finding that the ideas are kind of coming, which is the magic of writing, and so I'm really excited to get back to work.
Does it also have like a tight time thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your thing.
That's my thing. Yeah.
It works though. It's great for tension.
Exactly. Yeah. I need all the help I can
it
get
so
with
well.
tension. So
Great.
Yeah.
next time it'll be like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah. Like Speed. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.